Don't you just hate it when you know you have something, in my case it's a mini HDMI to female HDMI adapter, and you can't find it? And you know it's there, and you've looked everywhere, but it's gone, and it will show up when you don't need it. I need it now, because we are going to be looking at this, and I need to be able to frame it, and the only thing I have now to frame it is the little screen on my camera that's above me. There's a big screen in front of me, but I can't connect it to my camera, so I'll do my best. But first tea and a little story time. So I got a message on Facebook from a guy named Peter, or as we Dutch call it, Peter. And Peter said, I'm moving house and I have a shit ton of 70s, 80s and 90s audio magazines. Whether I was interested, and I was like, yeah, that's video material. You can make cool videos talking about them. And especially if they're 70s, they're probably pretty rare and kind of hard to find online. So it's kind of cool to share that. So it took a little time before I was anywhere near him, but I went to Peter's house I think it was Thursday. We had a lovely chat. I got coffee, I got Coke, and we looked at all of his audio. He's a JVC collector because his dad used to sell JVC. And he has an amazing collection that we will do a video on someday. The problem is it's already all wrapped up in bubble wrap. So we were sort of guessing what was what through the bubble wrap. It was a very entertaining afternoon. So I got 4 big boxes full of magazines, 70s, 80s and 90s. Many are in Dutch, but that's okay because we're mostly going to be looking at cool pictures. I also got this rather rare JVC phono cartridge, which is actually an Audio-Technica 80 3200 with JVC on it. Really nice card. I wouldn't have gotten rid of it if I was him, but that's what he did. I got a TV that he wanted to get rid of that I'm giving to my dad because I don't need it, but I saved it. And I got this really cool JVC Type 4 metal tape that of course is going to be in a video. So the main culprit though, the main thing here was the magazines. And let's just get started with this Hi-Fi Stereotest. Now I haven't figured out which year this is. Judging by the imagery, I would say this is mid to late 70s, but I'm not sure yet. I haven't read it at all yet, which is exactly what I'm doing, because I want to read them with you for the first time, and we should share the wonder. So, Critical Guide for Consumers, cost 2 guilders and 45 cents, that's about $1 and a bit in today's money, not counting for inflation. They're talking about what is RIAA, and I will explain what RIAA is. They're talking about the Nagaoka JT322, that's a quadraphonic cartridge, and there's some interviews and a lady on a car. I'm not sure what car, I should know, but I don't. And I think she's surrounded by Wharfdale speakers. So, anyway, first page. I'm not going to go through everything. We got the Tenberg 10XD. Now, the 10XD is the predecessor to the Tenberg TD20A reel-to-reel. And I had a few 10XDs, and what I noticed is that only the 2-track high-speed version sounded particularly good. I can't say the 4-track is very special. But it's a lovely machine to work with and it looks really cool. So you may want to Google it for a color photo, but that's the Tenberg 10XD. And this is probably the normal speed version, but I can't see that on the image here. Apparently there was a card once in here, which is adorable. Someone got it. Here's a Staffhorst advertisement. Staffhorst was an audio sales company. Here's the 10XD again. We got a Bose receiver, which actually isn't bad. And neither is this 1800 or 1801 power amplifier. This may even be a preceiver then, or a preamplifier, I can't say for sure. Bose amplifiers were actually remarkably good, as opposed to their speakers. Even the 901, no matter what people say, it's not a great speaker. It's alright, but if you see what people pay for them these days, oh boy. Things that are great though, this Torrance TD160. Lovely record player, they still sound amazing, and if you pair them with a half decent cartridge, they're as good as any new high-end record player. These are getting expensive. You used to be able to buy these for like $75. These days it's $300-400 for a good one. Still worth it though. I still highly recommend people buy a Torrance if they're looking for an affordable record player, but of course it's not affordable anymore. So here is an advertisement for Scotch tape, which makes sense with the Akai GX 600 tape deck here, because in those days Akai machines were calibrated for Scotch. 2 Scotch tape doesn't age particularly well, especially in more moist, colder climates like the Netherlands. But it's a really good sounding tape when it works. So they were awesome tapes back in the day, not even that expensive, but reliability was an issue. I'm just skipping the bits I can't tell you much about. This is all about cartridges. Here they're talking about the Nagaoka JT322. So the JT322 is just a JT311 with a Shibata stylus. You need a Shibata to read that special carrier tone that's in quadraphonic cartridges. So you could actually get 4 channels of audio, like dedicated channels, proper 4.0, from a record, and it did work very well. It's also perfectly fine for stereo, but technically this is the same card as the JT311, but with a different stylus. So if you ever want to buy a quadraphonic cartridge, and you want to buy a JT322, which is not a very special cartridge to be honest, make sure you actually get it with the Shibata stylus, because you can just put the JT311 stylus in there, and you won't be able to see the difference, but it won't work for a quadraphonic playback. So that's something to take into account. What do we have here? Micro, I think this is Micro Seiki. Probably that micro, I'm not quite sure. Apparently they made headphones, I did not know that. Yeah, this is kind of cute. This is the Philips 741 receiver. 2 times 11 watts, as you can read right here. Peak 2 times 17 watts. I'm not sure why they say it only has a frequency range of 20 to 20,000 hertz, because I'm pretty sure it goes lower than that, but oh well, it doesn't matter, because the speakers these came with were full range speakers that actually are very musical sounding, but not audiophile in any way. These receivers though, in all of their simplicity, sound pretty damn awesome. They actually do not sound bad. They often need a little cleaning, but they usually work. There's a switch here called headphones. That's not actually a switch. If you click that, it opens. Oh no, I'm wrong. That's another one. Okay, so a slightly more upmarket model has a headphone switch that opens when you click it, and you plug the headphone in behind it. And then if you press it again, it activates a switch, and that turns on or off the speakers. This one actually has the switch separate from the plug, which is at the bottom. So the plug is here, and the switch is there. These are really not bad amplifiers. If you have some speakers that are easy to drive, these do not sound bad in any way. So Omniphase I've never seen or heard, but they went for a design that you saw in these days with the Bose 901, but also the Acoustic Research MST with speakers on the side, speakers on the front, and then in this case also a speaker on the rear. Now I do not know these speakers. I am not sure if these are actually, they're talking about Bose here, so I'm not sure what they're talking about here. These are probably also Bose design then, I'm not sure. Let's see, what are they saying? Yeah, fake Bose they call this, replica Bose. So these are indeed not Bose, these are Omniphase by PR Audio apparently. But they have a woofer at the back, and I really wonder if that woofer is a passive resonator or not. But the text does not seem to mention that. They're still talking about the Bose. They're mostly talking about Bose here. I'm curious to see. They're talking about a 6-way filter. 1, 2. I have no idea how they ended up with 6, but it's an interesting speaker design. I have never seen that speaker. What's this? The EDC90. I do know the C90, and I do know the D. What's the EDC90? Interesting. They are just saying it's a good tape. They're not specifying this tape. They're just talking about how reliable TDK was back in the day, and it is. But I've never seen this EDC90, so I'm not even sure what exactly that is. This is interview with a musician, apparently. Here we're talking about Ampex tape. So these were not sold all in the Netherlands. You mostly saw the 2020 as a reel-to-reel tape, which was pretty much unusable already in the late 90s. It's about as bad sticky shed as it gets with that tape. I don't think the cassette tapes were much better, but I'm not quite sure. Here we're talking about funny design and stuff. What do we have here? This is Hi-Fi Center De Vries in Snake in the north of the country. What do we see? We have the Akai GX600 again. We have some Bang & Olufsen here. This looks like a Biogram 1000. That was my first record player. Here's some stereo centers. They're obviously very into their Bang & Olufsen. This is a Lenko. I recognize the arm with the silent blocks that keep the arm from rattling. Doesn't always work reliably. Mine definitely rattles, needs a little love. And this is a dual, not sure which one, but one with a built-in amplifier. So what I noticed is already Cambridge audio is in here already, even though that was a brand you didn't really see in this era in the Netherlands. But apparently, Cambridge was already there. So I have heard some ESS speakers that are really not bad. But then I have no idea what these are and whether they're any good. I wish we could see what's in them. They're comparing them with the B&W DM2A, great speaker, KEF RR104, bit woolly, Cambridge TL200, that's a pretty good speaker as well. These are probably going to be pretty British sounding then. It was a tower. It's called the ESS Tower. And tower speakers back in the 70s were not a given. Most speakers were still boxes. So this was definitely a different era, and a tower speaker was quite exciting back in the day. And they have compared them to many other British speakers. I'm not even sure if ESS is British. Apparently, they are quite aggressive sounding at times. Okay, well, there you go. Heathkit. I think Heathkit you could buy as building, as build-it-yourself devices. This was a Heathkit audioscope that showed you, the waveform of the audio, like a little oscilloscope. You didn't really need them, but it looked pretty damn awesome in your rig, obviously. The Bose 301. Well, we can be pretty short about that one. It's a piece of junk. It's just cheap speakers in a cheap cabinet sounding cheap. That said, if you have a Bose 301 with a dead woofer surround, you can replace it. But you can also replace it with, and now I have to think real deep, the Monacore SB something. There's a woofer that fits it exactly. I wish I could give you the model, but I'm going to put it in the screen. It fits exactly, it matches the filter, and actually is a huge upgrade. It's not the cheapest speaker, but if you have a pair of 301s that you want to keep for whatever reason, there is a speaker that you can just screw in them and it will actually make them sound better in every single way. And it may be a speaker that you actually may enjoy listening to them, but generally these sound horrible. The little directional thing that you can, and I'm not sure if you know, but there's a little divider here, like a little plastic flag that you can move around to direct the sound of the tweeter, but that flag's just made of floppy plastic and it just rattles. It's an incredibly bad idea, but yeah, that's what they did. Here's that Bose amplifier again. This is it's a preamp indeed, the 4401. That's the amplifiers Bose made, which is pretty good. I'm still surprised at how bad their speakers were compared to their amplifiers. This is talking about mono. EMI tape was actually really good, but no one ever bought it here. It seemed to never really leave the UK for some reason. It's a good sounding tape. Sennheiser microphones, yes. What's this? Guess the brand. Okay. I'm pretty sure that's a Kenwood. It's pretty though. It's a very pretty looking receiver. What are they saying? It's a Kenwood. Yep, it's a Kenwood. There you go. A pretty Kenwood receiver. Here's Era, a French record player builder brand that actually had pretty good record players, sort of, at the level of Lenko or Torrens even. They were not bad. I think this is an Era 444 though, and as you can see they put an SME 3009 on it, but this Era 444 was specifically made for the SME. The original 444 is narrower, and you see so many people who get a 444 and put an SME on it, and it just doesn't fit. You can't get the angle right, so that's actually a massive issue with those Eras with SMEs. Make sure you get the actual one that is meant for that arm, otherwise it won't fit. JBL, when it was still kind of cool. This is, definitely late 70s. I once had a JBL L66, the big one of these. It sounds over the top. it's a bit ridiculous, but there's something very likable about old JBL speakers. They sound thick. They sound present. They are not really relaxing, but there's something of a live experience going on there. They're in a way very good speakers, but they lack a lot of refinement. I have a bit of a weak spot for old JBL though. That's maybe not justified, but still. This, I actually had a Tri-Tracer 700. This is an incredible sounding machine. I was once at an audio show where they had, you can actually see it in one of my AAA Krefeld videos. I will put a link up. I'm not even going to try to point, somewhere in the top right corner. Where they demonstrated an audio rig with a Tri-Tracer 1000, so the bigger brother of this one. And you could just see people sigh and shake their heads because there was a cassette back and no one took it seriously. And then it started playing and people were blown away. I think it was even playing a Nakamichi demo tape. The Tri-Tracer series is very special, but of course with the age it has by now, it's not the most reliable. Tuners, what do we do with tuners? Listen to radio, not much good on the radio. Scott actually is one of those brands that is always slightly better than you remember. Their speakers are pretty good, their amplifiers are pretty good, their record players are pretty good. It never really made it big here, but it was a very reasonable, pretty affordable, serious hi-fi audio brand. Fisher, yeah. Fisher at some point became really shite. But in the beginning it was very good. The Fisher was a tube receiver, I believe, that was considered incredible. I never actually heard one, but they're supposed to be really good. These speakers look like they could be old-fashioned but pleasant sounding, but then I don't know them. Again, you barely see them in the Netherlands, even though this is a Dutch magazine, but it's the XP55S, 56S, 65S, etc. And then the ST 425, 445 and 465. I'm curious to see how these sound. I love how it says how many seconds it can do how many watts. So this speaker, for instance, can do a continuous power of 25 watts. Then it can withhold 50 watts for 60 seconds without dying. And it can do 100 watt for 2 seconds. I'm not sure why you want that, maybe to bully the neighbors for a second or so. Here's the JT322 again. It's a very woolly sounding cartridge, not very great. This is a brand I like. So I don't think the ALS 40 and 30 are particularly awesome speakers. The 40 is pretty good. The TLS though is amazing. The Super Compact is amazing. And I actually still have an old pair of IMF compacts. They use KEF tweeters, the T27, so there's not a lot of highs. They're not great tweeters. But other than that, it's an amazing design with a ridiculous low end for a small speaker. If you can find a pair of Super Compacts or Compacts cheap, I would definitely recommend trying them. Bear in mind the Super Compact always needs its mids refoamed. This is when Bang & Olufsen started going wrong. Don't get me wrong, this sounds pretty good, but it's definitely starting to be form over function. Bang & Olufsen before this, in the mid and early 70s, was actually pretty damn good. It was good sounding stuff, and with this stuff it didn't sound bad at all. The cartridges, the 20 MMC and such, were remarkably good even, but it's all very proprietary and just a bit too Apple-y for my taste. And I'm not saying that because I'm an Apple hater, because I'm using Apple, but it's annoying that that so much stuff that doesn't have to be proprietary all of a sudden became Bang & Olufsen only, like the cartridges, the speaker connectors and stuff like that. It was not ideal. Solo Sound, Solo Sound has been a brand that made electrostatic sound speakers, Dutch brand. We've had two, Solo Sound and Final, and they both, I think, never made anything particularly awesome. If you compare it to the quad ESL electrostatic speakers, or even a magnetostatic speaker like the Magnepon SMJ, which is not that expensive, it just doesn't get anywhere near. So I never really got Solo Sound, but they really like themselves from what I can see. They're on their own photo. They look like they know what they're doing, whether that is true or not. Okay, you could get 5,000 guilders in prices. Apparently some people did. Hilo Hi-Fi. Hilo was one of those Dutch brands that I think was pretty serious. I got some of their speakers through the years, and they're pretty good, but for some reason you never see them anymore. But you can see some nice, I think that's Audex tweeters. These look like pretty well designed speakers from what I can tell, but they never made it big somehow. But you still sometimes hear people talk about the brand, they remembered it somehow. Here's that Ampex 2020 I was talking about, really good sounding tape, but impossible when it comes to reliability. Yeah, avoid at all cost. RIAA. So RIAA is pretty much the equalizer used to make a record sound like a record. The more bass you have in a record, the longer the movements become of the stylus. And of course, at some point, the stylus can't move anymore and any slower, and it's an issue to get bass in a groove. Also, bass is usually pretty loud, so the groove gets more wiggly. And if it gets too loud, the stylus jumps out of the groove. So to prevent that from happening, they record low frequencies on a record really quietly. So if you were to play a record without any equalizing, you mostly hear highs and mids and not a lot of lows. It would sound incredibly bright. So in every phono preamplifier, there's an RIAA equalizer curve built in. That makes it sound balanced. So yeah, that's why you can't just amplify the sound of a record player until it's line level. You need that correction. That's why we all have dedicated phono preamplifiers. So there you go, RIAA. You need it. There you go. See? Loads of lows, no highs. It just goes. So that's the curve, as you can see. So yeah, I love how there's written notes in the book. It's actually plus 20 dB for the lows to minus 20 dB for the highs at some point. It's ridiculous how much correction there is. Yeah, this is not Kev's best time, I think. You had the Corelli before, and the Cresta, and then you got the Corale, the Caprice, and the Cadenza. The Cadenza is kind of a nice sounding speaker. These both sound very cheap, very boxy, especially the Corale is just sounding very hollow. Not a great sounding speaker, and that T27 tweeter just isn't very great. So yeah, it's I don't know why Kev ever made it so big. Most of their speakers are not that amazing. I like the old Corelli, I like the old Cresta, and I do like what they do with the new LS 50, if you drive it well and not get the active one. But I don't think it's a speaker brand that's that special. Here we're talking about AKG, still one of my favorite speaker brands. I've never heard this K140 they're talking about, but it's probably going to be okay. Well, that's great. This was one of my favorite amplifiers getting into audio, the SQ505X. They're ridiculously expensive now and they all need overhauling. But Luxman is one of those brands, if you buy a vintage Luxman up to the late 80s, mid to late 80s, it's always a good amplifier, no matter which price range. I love Luxman. I think this was their first solid state amplifier, so no tubes. They're incredibly open sounding, almost like a non-solid state amplifier, because especially in the beginning, solid state tended to sound a bit boxed in compared to tube. It's an amazing amplifier that I highly recommend if you're looking for something serious, but get one that is professionally overhauled, because they need a lot of love after all these years. But it's a very special thing, especially if you have speakers that are relatively easy to drive, because they're not that powerful. I think 2 times 30 watts maybe, not sure, don't hold me to that, but they're really lovely amplifiers. Nothing but good to say about old Luxman stuff. Ooh, okay, so we got the Marantz Receivers that I never cared for, Marantz preamp. I think this is, what cassette deck is this? Probably a JVC or so, not sure. This is a lovely looking page. Pretty sure these are both Akai. This is the GX260, I think. This is probably an Akai as well. I love the drawing they did. Probably some cheap Japanese pair of headphones. Horrible. But yeah, this is just nice how they did the drawings back in the day. Making it look very retro. Makes you wonder why they didn't use a photo. But this is cuter, so I'm cool with that. Oh boy, here we go. I think Orthophone is one of the worst cartridge brands out there. Their more expensive ones are pretty damn awesome. But all of the affordable cards up to 700-800 euros are just not worth the money. I think the 2M is a horrible series. I think the OM was a horrible series. I think the FF 15, 20, 30, even the MCs are nowhere near what they cost. Woolly, messy sounding cartridges that often have a difficult compliance for average arms, and just not worth the money. Definitely not accuracy and sound either. BMW, love the 2A, love that combination of, they call it 3-way, but it's a bit weird because it has a woofer, a nice big subwoofer, sort of a bass, a transmission line system, and then it has a tweeter, the Celestion HF1300, and a super tweeter, the Coles 4001. Same goes for the DM4. I've never seen the D5, I'm not sure what that is, much cheaper, so I'm going to Google that later. But DM4 is pretty much a small DM2A. They are incredibly transparent, non-aggressive sounding speakers with a lovely low end, especially the 2A. It's a bit slow, the low end, it's a bit lagging, but if you like your low end loose and calm, these are really lovely speakers. Awesome, I love this era of BMW. I've never heard this one, unfortunately. The DM70 looks really cool. Yeah, here we go. Speakers that are made for home music playing are rarely accompanied by permanently obtrusive commercial critology. Too much presence isn't good and makes you tired. It literally says it here in Dutch, and it's very true. If your speaker... I love this. This is actually very true. If you are going to compare speakers and there's one or more that immediately grab your attention, buyer beware. It's true. You want to test speakers at a low level, even while talking, and if they don't become obtrusive, and if you don't feel like you're missing stuff, if they're not too much in your face, that's probably the speakers you're going to enjoy the longest. Because aggressive speakers are horrible. We're getting to the end. Scansonic with a woofer pointing downwards. I have no idea what they are, but probably Scandinavian. Oh, acoustical as well. Weird brand. CEC. CEC made record players for loads of brands. Many pioneers are CEC. This is a Wharfdale. Wharfdale was weird back in the day. Their small speakers were very small sounding. Their big ones were actually pretty damn good. I really love the Wharfdale Dovedale. It's a really good sounding speaker. But CEC made a lot of record players for Pioneer, for Kenwood, for Akai. And they're really good. If you see your CEC that looks anything like this, like a wooden machine, you're probably going to have a very decent record player. That's probably, with not too much work, very reliable. So there you go. Teleton, budget speaker brand, but actually my second amplifier ever was this little Teleton here. You can barely see it. We bought it at the flea market together with a Quad 33 for 1 guilder, which is about 50 dollar cents. So yeah, that was different times. And then we end up with some advertisements at the back, some second-hand stuff here, people trying to sell their stuff. Akai GXC 46D, not even a year old, 750 guilders. This is amazing. 2 Macintosh speakers, I didn't even know they made them. And preamplifier and power amplifier. Well, Pioneer receiver SX525, Sony TC756, 1895 guilders. That's about 800 euros. That's worth more now. Awesome. Here's someone selling a TIAC A350 with 8 Agfa C90 chrome tapes. Lovely, lovely times. And at the back we have the Nakamichi Ellipson, also lovely by the way. Nakamichi Dual Tracer 550, a lovely portable. And a cool machine with a little leatherette thing on the top. Nakamichi did some awesome stuff back in the day. They actually lived up to their name. There you go. Hi-Fi Stereotest. Still don't know when this was, but this is our first look at this. 1975. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will make some more with completely different magazines in the near future. Exactly fit this in half an hour, which is great because my camera records in half an hour batches. Can you tell they're sped up towards the end? Bye!